Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. This is, again, another edition of BadgerBlitz TV. I'm Jay Kokorowski, senior writer at BadgerBlitz.com, yourrivals.com, destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. From the recruiting trail, inside Camp Randall Stadium, and, of course, on the court of the Kohl Center. Big week. Happy holiday week to everybody as we're gearing up, and we're getting into talk now. We had some bowl prep practices. You heard from some players about some of the younger guys standing out during those sessions. Marcus Allen's one of them, that the former four-star wide receiver who's a true freshman that's been turning some heads at least last week. And now we're starting to turn our attention more to the bowl game coming up in just 8 days down in Las Vegas, the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Again, that's December 30th. For us, it's a late time, 9:30 p.m. Central Time. I'll be up burning the midnight oil. I think that's the term in terms of trying to get all the coverage, at least covering from my couch here in Madison, Wisconsin. Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada is the place to be. How to watch, of course, ESPN. And to listen, the Badger Sports Network, Matt LePay, Mike Lucas. Great duo to listen on the radio in case you can't catch it on TV. And the odds right now, looking at Wisconsin, is a 7-point favorite according to FanDuel. We'll see what that changes leading up in the next 8 days, but that's a nice little preview there. But to join us today, really happy to have him on. Joining us now from DevilsDigest.com, our good friend Hod Rabino, of course, our Rivals.com cousins that cover Arizona State. How are you doing, my friend? And just how are you gearing up for this bowl game between Wisconsin and a Pac-12 program like Arizona State?
Yeah, nice to talk to you too, Jake. And the mood in Arizona State has definitely been one of really taking this game very, very seriously. They know they have quite the challenge on their hands. I hear the word physical come up. It seems like every nanosecond when Arizona State talks about Wisconsin. So I think if you're a Wisconsin fan, you definitely wear that as a badge of honor. I know Wisconsin is a team that had a very slow start, but then went on a really hot run in the middle of the season. And I know that's really, in a lot of ways, just your typical Big Ten powerhouse program, a team that can run the ball really well, a team that can stop the run even better, I think. So I know Arizona State definitely knows that they have quite the challenge on their hands. They definitely have some personnel issues, if you will, between opt-outs and players in the transfer portal. I know we're going to talk about that in the next few minutes. So it's definitely a team that ASU knows that they're going to have their hands full with. But crazy things sometimes happen with bowl games, especially if they're not your New Year's Day or playoff bowl games. So really curious to see how this game is going to unfold. But again, I know that Arizona State is fully aware, of the formidable challenge they have with the Badgers.
Absolutely. And, looking at Arizona State, their record 8-4, 6-3 in the Pac-12, just how would you describe their season for those that have not been able to cover Arizona State? What would you make of the Sun Devils' season leading up to this point?
Well, I think what's kind of ironic is that my expectations, maybe compared to the Pac-12 media as a whole, were much higher. The Pac-12 media in their preseason poll selected ASU to finish third in the South Division, and not even really sniff a South Division championship, let alone a Pac-12 championship. And those are the goals, and those were my expectations of this team. And I did put that in the preseason poll to back my name on it, so to speak. So to me, this season definitely has been a disappointment. Now, don't get me wrong. If you look at the history books of ASU football, having a team that wins 8 games with a possibility of winning 9 is definitely the exception rather than the norm. And I know some fans have spoken in those terms, probably describing this season as not being a disappointment. But for me, this is a team that had an abundance of talent, probably the most talent they had since the 1996 season, where they actually suffered their only loss in the January 1st, 1997 Rose Bowl to Ohio State. If some of your fans watching this video remember, definitely not a pleasant memory here in Tempe. But in terms of the talent, I felt that this team was really stacked up from top to bottom. What did happen, and maybe some folks watching this are aware of this, that ASU has been under an NCAA investigation for alleged recruiting violations going all the way back to June this past summer. And that definitely has put somewhat of a dark cloud on the team. I think for the most part, they were able to persevere, but the fact that they had to put not one, but three assistant coaches on admin leave right before fall camp, or just in some cases just days into fall camp, I think did throw things into a tizzy, if you will. And that, I think, ultimately did have some effect on the program when you look back at the regular season. Definitely some losses that easily could have been wins. An ASU team that really shot itself in the foot, especially with penalties and turnovers. So I think there's really an overall sense of what if about this team, because I think this team didn't really fall that much from Utah, the team that actually did win not only the South Division but also the Pac-12 as a whole. When ASU played in Salt Lake City, they were leading at halftime 21-7. And then in the second half, the wheels just absolutely came off. So when I said that ASU shot itself in the foot, it's not me making myself feel better about what transpired. I think when you look legitimately at the game film, it's just a team that just was really its own worst enemy. And when ASU could not beat ASU, that's when they lost games. So I'm curious to see how they show up to this ball game. It could be somewhat a redemption contest, if you will, for Arizona State, and I think would be a pretty big feather in their cap to finish this season with 9 wins, and the last victory being over a team of the caliber of Wisconsin.
Now, you mentioned some of the opt-outs and transfer portal additions coming up, and I know there's at running back, I think there are 2 of them, one going to the, skipping the bowl game, the other one going to the transfer portal. But just who are some of the names that, in terms of the transfer portal, in terms of declaring for the draft or skipping the bowl game to prepare for the NFL, who are those names to watch? And are there any other injuries that fans should know about from ASU side as well?
Sure. Well, let's start on offense because you mentioned the running back. So Rashad White, who was the leading running back for the Sun Devils in 2021 and really going back to the 2020 season as well. He did declare for the NFL draft and is opting out of the ball game. But what makes the situation in running back even more adverse is that his backup, DeMonte Chip Traynham, went into the transfer portal. He's somebody that sure was in the shadow of Rashad White, but a very, very talented running back that in his 2 years in Tempe has showed quite a bit. Now, ironically, Wisconsin fans may be really familiar with DeMonte Traynham because he actually visited one school to date after going to the transfer portal, and that's Michigan. Really haven't heard a whole lot ever since that visit took place, but that doesn't mean that DeMonte Traynham was actually originally from Akron, Ohio. Could be back in Big Ten country and play for the Wolverines in 2022. So that leaves ASU with only one scholarship running back, a player that I'm really high on, Daniel Ngata, but it's really a situation where he's going from 0 to 100, if you will, from a third string running back to the feature running back, and really nothing but walk-ons around him. And for facing a team such as Wisconsin that averages 65 yards in run defense, even if ASU had its entire stable of running backs, I would say this is one heck of a challenge. And I think that challenge is now just tenfold just with the running back situation that ASU has right now. When you look at wide receiver, 2 wide receivers, Jordan Porter and Johnny Wilson, are in the transfer portal ever since the season ended, the regular season, I should say, ended. Not really impact wide receivers, but it's really a group that doesn't have really that many stars to begin with. So now having even fewer bodies, is that going to have an effect? It remains to be seen. This is definitely a game that if Arizona State would win it, I think it definitely would have to come through its passing game rather than its running game. And not that Wisconsin has a porous pass defense by any means, but I just feel that ASU, by and large, would find more success in the air than they would on the ground. And their passing game has really been struggling as it is. And the last element I would mention on offense in terms of personnel is that their starting center, Donovan West, somebody that has been showing up as a top 10 center prospect in the NFL draft, and it's still unclear if he is or is not going to declare for the NFL draft. But he is going to sit out this game, not because of an opt-out, but just because of injury. But maybe he does have NFL draft aspirations as it is in his mind. So now the offensive line is a little bit reshuffled for ASU. Again, you're dealing with the best defense in the country, the best run defense in the country as well. So an offensive line that's reshuffled really creates some challenges over there. On defense, the front seven is pretty much intact as it was in the regular season, but there is one notable change, and that's their best linebacker, Darian Butler. It's kind of like a dual aspect going on here. I mean, he did suffer concussion in early November, and really has not played since. He was at practices this month, but on a very, very limited basis. And throughout all this, he, I guess, quasi-declared for the NFL draft because he said he accepted an invite to the Shrine Bowl game. Bottom line is I'm not expecting him to play. And when I look at how ASU performed against the run, or against, I should say, teams with really good running games like Wisconsin without Darian Butler, that definitely has been an issue. So I don't know if the defense is going to be all that successful without Darian Butler in the lineup, but that remains to be seen on December 30th. In the secondary, there are two starting corners, Jack Jones and Chase Lucas. They're in their last season in the program, and they just decided to begin their NFL draft preparations early and not play in the bowl game. I know Wisconsin's passing game, by and large, is definitely not a strong suit of the team on either side of the ball, but nonetheless, just like with Daniel and Gada on running back, now you're expecting cornerbacks that, by and large, have never been starters, have never been heavily relied on to be just thrust into the spotlight, and it's just really that unknown element, for lack of a better term, that the ASU secondary is going to have to deal with players that are just going to play, double, triple the snaps that they played in any given game in 2021. So I don't mean to paint a overly bleak picture for ASU when it comes to opt-outs and just personnel matters, but it's definitely going to be a different team than ASU fans have been accustomed to, at least in terms of the starters, than they've seen the entire 2021 season. And facing a team like Wisconsin definitely makes it intriguing in that sense to see how those players can really showcase themselves again when they're just thrusted into a role that they really have not been accustomed to for the last 3 months.
Yeah, and people know Trainum's name, the running back for Wisconsin, because he took an official visit up here back in the summer of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So, again, he was a key recruiting target for that recruiting cycle before he decided upon Arizona State, too. So it'll be very interesting. That on that note, like kind of heading into the offense, got maybe 3 more questions for you, Hod, with that. Sure. Going into the offense, and let me just make sure we got that. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this on your end, but we have a slide up talking just some brief overview about this offense. 29 points, almost 30 points per game. Rushing wise, I know Wisconsin's going to have to deal with an unknown running back, but 204.5 yards per game, 5.3 yards per carry. Very balanced with the offense at about 198 yards per game through the air. Third down conversions, that's going to be a key for Wisconsin in trying to get Arizona State off the field because they convert over 41% of their third down opportunities to move the chains there. Sacks allowed, only 20, so less than 2 per contest, and Wisconsin likes to turn up that pressure. It'll be interesting against a dual threat quarterback, and that'll be my question in a second. But also, you mentioned the turnovers, 21 lost. That's nine interceptions, 12 fumbles lost. I guess, Tom, when you look at this team, and we'll start with that dual threat quarterback, Jayden Daniels, like Graham Mertz, a big time 2019 prospect, 4-star recruit, one of the best in the nation. What has he done well? This season, and Wisconsin's had trouble against dual threat quarterbacks like an Adrian Martinez right at the end of the regular season. But what does he do well? But where are some of the shortcomings that you've seen during this, this third year for him?
Yeah, with Jayden Daniels, it's been somewhat of a head scratcher, if not a disappointing trend where his numbers his freshman year are just night and day from what we've seen in 2021. And I'm purposely not really talking about the 2020 season. COVID really hit the Sun Devils really hard. They only had a 4-game season. But what happened in 2020, they did have a new offensive coordinator come from Boise State, Zach Hill. And it's been well documented here in Tempe how it's been a slow-moving process for Jayden Daniels and his wide receivers to really absorb what has been, in comparison, a much more complex offensive system than what he played in 2019 with the previous offensive coordinator, Rob Likens. And you thought that, okay, now there's a veteran quarterback in Jayden Daniels in his third year in the program. The wide receivers who were wet behind the ears, if you will, in 2020, a year older, a year wiser in 2021, that the passing game would really show marked improvement. And especially with a running game that has been absolutely exceptional. Now, I know those numbers can be deceiving when you look at the totality of the 2021 season, because the number one and number two running backs are not going to play in Las Vegas. But that's what makes maybe even more baffling a passing game that got all the support it could ever ask from a running game. I mean, teams that were 10 times more concerned on any given Saturday facing the ground attack rather than the aerial attack for ASU. And for the vast majority of contests, even in the beginning of the year in those cupcake games, the ASU passing game just really never exploded. I mean, sure, there were some games here and there. UCLA is probably the game that comes up the most. And but that was a game where UCLA back then was the 5th worst pass defense in the country. So at least it gave ASU's passing game credit for taking full advantage of an inferior opponent on that Saturday back in the beginning of October. But otherwise, it's a passing game that really struggled quite a bit. And I think that the meshing of Jayden Daniels and the defense coordinator Zach Hill has been a process that has taken much longer than anybody anticipated. I know that the wide receivers, I'm not blaming them at all, because to me, it always takes 2 to tango when it comes to a quarterback and a wide receiver for a passing game really to click. I think that group, by and large, really has not been consistent at all. So this been really just struggles all over the place. And more oftentimes than not, good running game and good defense by ASU was able to mask some of the issues that the passing game has had. But when there were contests where the passing game really had to step up, I just feel that Jayden Daniels and his wide receivers were not able to do that. And when you look at a game like the Las Vegas Bowl, well, again, not to belabor the point, but Wisconsin is not going to give this ground attack of ASU any breathing room to operate whatsoever. Can this passing game really get over the hump and still play, I think, against a fairly stingy pass defense by Wisconsin, but definitely a pass defense that ASU is going to have to exploit as much as they can, because, again, you're not going to move the ball on the ground that much against Wisconsin. So can Jayden Daniels in a wide receiver group, which now is missing 2 players that were more or less part of the 2 deep throughout the season, can it really compensate for those losses and really turn in a game that by and large would be atypical for them, passing for 200, 250 yards? That really remains to be seen. But I would say all in all, Jake, the passing game and its struggles in 2021 have been an enigma and an absolute significant point of frustration for ASU fans, and I'm sure for the ASU coaches as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing to watch out for too is just, I mentioned Adrian Martinez. Well, Jayden Daniels being that dual threat quarterback, he's now the leading rusher for Arizona State, right? 670 yards, 5.6 yards per carry, 6 rushing scores. So, that could be a spark. And I mean, one of the keys for Wisconsin, that defensive end, will be not allowing to contain enough and not allow him to break and extend plays, give up a big broken play that goes, for significant yardage there. That's going to be a key for Wisconsin, because we've seen that happen against Nebraska or even against Minnesota, where even though Minnesota only passed for just under 200 yards, there were some big plays that extended drives in that loss. But, going ahead to the defense and looking at this, at the Arizona State defense, looks stout on paper, right? Like just about 21 points per game allowed. Rushing, you talk about Wisconsin being one of the top 15, top 20 teams in the nation at the moment in terms of yards per game, but Arizona State gives up just under 129 per contest on just 3.6 yards per carry. Passing yards per game allowed just about 200. Wisconsin doesn't necessarily obviously have I think it's 118th in the nation right now in passing yards per game, and under the top 100 when it comes to team passing efficiency. So, but Sun Devils do allow about 200 yards per game, 36% in terms of third down conversion defense. They've sacked quarterbacks 25 times. They've created 20 turnovers as well, and that's going to be something to watch for Wisconsin where they've lost. They've lost the turnover battle, which, let's be honest, that seems pretty cliche in football terms, as you know, that Hod when it comes to the game. But yeah, looking at that, who has stood out on this defense for Arizona State, and what, where, again, maybe it's a kind of a question like for the offense with talking about Jayden Daniels, but where have they shined, but also where have they struggled, where I've seen too, Arizona State's given up, even though they've been stingy against the run, they've given up some big plays, big games, maybe all 4 games where they've had about 180 yards or more allowed.
Well, I don't want to overstate the obvious, but when ASU faced really good caliber running backs that ended up on the first or second team Pac-12, like Tavian Thomas from Utah or BJ Baylor from Oregon State, then this ASU run defense, which, as you mentioned, by and large has been pretty stout, definitely did have its difficulties. ASU was really dealt quite the blow when their best defensive tackle, Jermaine Lole, had a season-ending injury in fall camp, and I think it's been an uphill battle since then to really adequately replace him. He's somebody that even in a short 4-game 2020 season was actually considered to be a legitimate NFL prospect. Came back from 2021 just because he didn't have that much film. Ironically, some NFL scouts were asking ASU coaches why he hasn't entered the draft, because that's how highly they thought about him. Now, and then even a more ironic twist, he's still not going to enter the NFL draft just because he has no film, obviously, in 2021 to show. So he's coming back in 2022, which is good news for ASU. But this is a defensive line that, has played pretty well at times, but definitely had some deficiencies. They had I believe, a 5-game streak towards the end of the season where they did not record a sack. Now, you can talk about quarterbacks that just have a quick release, maybe something that's not that common in the Big Ten, but really all the rage in the Pac-12 in terms of style of signal callers. But it still was a point of concern. As I mentioned, when they faced the creme de la creme of running backs in the Pac-12, they definitely had more issues than victories, if you will, in that department. But it is still pretty good defensive line. Nose tackle DJ Davidson, and the 2 defensive ends, Tyler Johnson and Michael Matus. Those are probably names to keep in mind. And if ASU is going to have any success in somewhat containing a very powerful running game for the Badgers, I would definitely expect those players to be on the forefront of that effort. At linebacker, I talked about the absence of Darian Butler, which I think is going to be very significant, especially against the run. They do have some good players over there still. Merlin Robertson, Kyle Sole, Eric Gentry, who showed up on a lot of freshman All-American list at the end of the 2021 season. But the rushing game challenge that they're going to face in a team like Wisconsin is definitely going to be one of the toughest, if not the toughest, they faced all year long. And again, when you look at the track record of facing really, really good ground attacks by the opponent, more oftentimes than not, ASU was not able to slow down those elements of their opponents when it comes to that. When you look at the secondary, it's still a pretty good secondary that's going to have its 2 starting safeties, Evan Fields and DeAndre Pierce. It's not that the cornerbacks are going to play are all that inexperienced, but now just really playing 50, 60 snaps a game is still going to be foreign territory. So I'm really curious to see how they do on that end. And I'm not saying that the ASU secondary is not taking the Wisconsin passing game seriously, but it goes without saying, especially from the safety position, that they're going to be judged much more on their support of the run defense rather than really slowing down an aerial attack. I believe that the starting quarterback for Wisconsin only averages 150 yards a game. So unless he has some career breakout contest against ASU, I don't know if the secondary is going to be tested all that much. And again, not to overstate the obvious, but if ASU has any chance of winning this game, they're really going to have to slow down, because I know they're not going to totally stop the running game for Wisconsin. But if they can put more pressure on the passing game for the Badgers, I think that the coaching staff feels good about their chances of not really giving up a lot of yards in the air. But again, it's just really all about the battle of the trenches, which I know you can say that about any given game
Right.
in terms of a key for the contest. But again, the numbers that Wisconsin puts up in the run defense and in the run game just really, I think, enhance that cliche that much more. So really quite the challenge for the ASU defense. And if we're being honest about it, a challenge that earlier in some games in the 2021 season, this unit definitely had a hard time stopping.
Right. And it's funny too when we talk about that, like we talk about the battle of the trenches and the battle of the lines. Like it is cliche, but it's something that I mentioned in pretty much, I feel like all my game previews the last 5 games of the year, where it is, because that's Wisconsin's MO on the defensive side of the ball, is to stop the run first and then make it beat through the, through the pass. And then, with Wisconsin, even though they had some semblance of, and Badger fans know this as I'm talking, right now, that there was some semblance of a balanced attack or complementary football at the very least against Rutgers and Northwestern, even in the first half against Iowa. But it's been inconsistent. It was inconsistent against Minnesota, which led to the loss in the loss of Paul Bunyan's axe. So it will be interesting to see what that passing game can do and how they rebound, especially with outgoing seniors like Kendrick Pryor, Danny Davis, Jake Ferguson for the receiving targets, and we'll see just how much they're called upon and just how what Graham Mertz and company can do in that to see if they can rebound and kind of catch up to like what they did against Rutgers, Northwestern, and Nebraska, where it was not necessarily depended upon in terms of the passing game, but you're also going to look at when they were called upon, they made it happen. But last question for you, Hod. Keys to the game. What are your keys for Arizona State to come away with a Las Vegas Bowl victory and hit jackpot, if you will?
Well, when I look on the offense, it's not so much the passing game playing, if not their best game of the year, at least a top 3 performance in that department. That's going to be crucial. Again, not to belabor the point, but I don't expect ASU, especially with a depleted stable of running backs, really to find that much success against the Badgers front 7. It's not so much the passing game just really being exceptional, but I think you're going to see ASU really go deep into its bag of tricks, which honestly isn't all that rare anyway, because teams have so much film on each other when you're playing the 13th or the 14th game of the season that you do have to mix things up. Now, obviously, you have to make sure that you're not really trying to be over creative and confusing your own team with any trickery that you're trying to employ. But the ASU offense is definitely going to have to be creative. And I'm sure there's some creativity even in the ground game that they can employ. But that's definitely going to be a crucial element of this game. This passing game for ASU, which, again, has been a head-scratcher, major disappointment. Any ASU fan can put in their own label on this. It's really going to have to perform just over and above anything that we saw in most games in 2021. On defense, it's really obviously going to be just crowding the line of scrimmage, putting those cornerbacks on an island, and really taking your chances with the Wisconsin passing game, which, no disrespect to that aspect of the Badgers, but also an aspect that I think that ASU is gladly willing to take their chances with, because if they, again, can somehow, some way slow down Braden Allen in that running game for Wisconsin, they feel that they have enough weapons in the secondary really not to give up a lot of yards and really make it that much harder on Wisconsin to move the chains. But I just feel that with ASU's track record of not being able to slow down all that much. Really talented running backs like the ones that Wisconsin has, and on the other hand, just really having a running back stable, which I know is going to try its hardest, but is already facing the best run defense in the country. I think it's going to be really, really hard for ASU to come out with a victory over here. So if you're looking for a final score, I think it's going to be Wisconsin over ASU 21-13. And again, the ability to stop the run and the ability to run the ball are definitely going to be key over here for both teams. And I think in that specific battle, that's one that I do expect Wisconsin to win on December 30th in Las Vegas.
Hod, man, we appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have this up later this afternoon. What else do y'all have got going on DevilsDigest.com leading up to the bowl game?
Well, the video piece we're doing right now is just going to be one of many preview pieces we're going to have. We're also going to have a film study breaking down the Wisconsin offense and defense. And yes, there'll probably be a running theme of in the trenches in that one. But we definitely do, like we do all year long, really take a close look at the opponent, see the different trends we see on offense and defense, just to give our fans and also fans of the opponent, fans of other teams, just a preview of what they can expect in the upcoming game. There's still basketball going, as you know, so there's also going to be some basketball coverage mixed up over there with the pre-bowl coverage. But that's really what we have going on. Just a lot of content to prepare our fans and fans of other teams, for that matter, up to this Las Vegas Bowl game on December 30th.
Excellent. And folks, make sure you guys go again, DevilsDigest.com, ArizonaState.Rivals.com. From that, really appreciate Hod making time for us this morning. And folks, too, make sure you go to, of course, BadgerBlitz.com, Wisconsin.Rivals.com. Search for us on Facebook, Wisconsin Badgers, on BadgerBlitz.com. You can find this interview, of course, on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. It's free. It helps us grow our product more and have some more innovative interviews going forward. You see all the player availability interviews. We were down at a signing ceremony last Wednesday for Isaac Ham, a talented high 3-star prospect. We got a lot going on here. Check back in later this week and this upcoming week for more videos coming up here on Badger Blitz TV.